So hello everyone and welcome to this webinar focusing on reading skills for secondary exams using Languagenut. We've got a great series of webinars lined up coming up before Easter. This is the second webinar in our series looking at the skills for secondary exams. We also have for our primary colleagues a webinar with guest speaker Ellie Tuttle-Cully looking at primary curriculum design using Languagenut, so we've got something for everyone. Today I'm joined by an amazing practitioner from one of our Glasgow schools, Callum Anderson, who's going to share his expertise with us and his ideas for your classroom using Languagenut, focusing on the skill of reading.
My name's Callum Anderson and I am a modern languages teacher in Glasgow. I work in the south side of Glasgow in Govan High School, and Languagenut in Govan High School has been brilliant. It's really made a difference for us in terms of our engagement. The impact that it's having on pupils is huge. It's a real motivating factor for us, and a resource that we lean on quite heavily throughout the year across various topics. So I think today I'm just going to take you through a few of the kind of features of Languagenut that we find really helpful here, some of the aspects that have been really motivating for our pupils, the ways in which they've been motivating. So just in terms of the context that I'm working in. So I've been in Govan High School for around 5 or 6 years now. Previously, I started my teaching career in the south of Spain, in Cádiz, where I worked across kind of both primary and secondary level as an English teacher primarily. I then came back to Scotland, trained fully up as a modern languages teacher, and I'm now qualified to teach both Spanish and French as well. So that's a wee bit of my kind of story. In terms of my context, in terms of my school, so like I say, I've been in Govan High School maybe 5 or 6 years now. We are a relatively small school within or just outside of the city centre of Glasgow. We have around 600 pupils or so, but within that, we're very fortunate to have a really strong languages department. So it's a subject that's strong in its uptake amongst pupils and their engagement, but also growing as time goes on as well. In my school, pupils do have the option to drop languages at the end of S2, having experienced both Spanish and French. But I'm really pleased and really proud to say as well that the majority of pupils choose to continue on with languages into S3, 4, 5 and 6. And we do have quite a few pupils that have gone on to study languages at university as well, which we're really, really pleased with. And Languagenut's been a real part of that, in terms of keeping pupils engaged at all levels. It's really sustained that, and you'll see as we go through. So for those who maybe don't have experience of Languagenut before, everyone has their own individual login for Languagenut when you've signed up for it. So this will be what you'll see is my sort of screen and what I get when I log into Languagenut. But each pupil individually will also have a login that they can use to access Languagenut on any device with internet access. We're very fortunate in Glasgow that all pupils in secondary are given an iPad. So that's been really, really great for us in terms of getting pupils engaged in Languagenut, but as I say, they can do it with they can access it with any device that has internet access as well. So primarily when I'm going into Languagenut, I'll obviously go for this secondary section. Maybe if there's a bit of time later on, we can maybe discuss some of the other ones. We'll see how we go. And of course, there's then a range of languages available. Most of the time we'll be accessing Spanish, but we do also use the French resources as well. And the first thing I really want to highlight as being really beneficial and useful for motivating pupils, I do have to say, particularly when it comes to reading activities, because of the nature of them and the way that pupils can engage in them with some independence, is the points system on Languagenut. So when pupils complete an activity, they are rewarded with points depending on how they've performed in that activity. The more answers they get right, the better they do, the more points that they get. And these then go towards various sort of totals that are displayed in these rankings and league tables here. So if I were to take you over to this one here, just where my mouse is, where it says school ranking, this is the main one that really we tend to use across Govan High School, and that is really motivating for our pupils. So as you can see, we can see pupils here who have completed activities on Languagenut along with their points totals along this side here. This is a great feature. This is a really motivating factor for our pupils. They absolutely love being able to see who's winning, how far they are behind the winner. You know, oh, I need to go and get more points because such and such is beating me. That, you know, that kind of competitive element is a real motivating factor for getting young people engaged in languages and getting them engaged independently as well. Them taking the initiative to go and get involved in doing activity that is based entirely in the target language. So what we tend to do is have monthly competitions. So as you can see at the bottom here, it tells you that, hold on, I lost my mouse, there we go. Points reset at the beginning of each month. So at the end of each month, these points will go back to 0 and it starts again. And it means that every month we have a competition in the school to see who can get the most points. And at the end there'll be prizes and rewards for the individual within the whole school that manages to get the most points. So that, you know, that can be whatever it, you know, you wish it to be. And we tend to do things like certificates, lots of merits. We have a Star of the Month in Modern Languages initiative as well. Pupils get their name up on a board as well. It's really motivating, and I'm always pleasantly surprised by how keen S6 pupils, who are, you know, 16, 17, some of them, are to get their name on the board as Star of the Month. So it really does motivate them through all of the kind of stages as well. You do also have the classes league section, which is over here, and that's across different classes. As I say, we're quite a small school, so sometimes there's not a huge amount of classes on here, but what happens is all the pupils in a particular class, their points get added together, and you end up with this kind of league table here. Another really effective kind of motivating tool, because we'll do a reward class for the group, the class that have managed to come top of that as well. You do also have the world ranking, which is a great motivator as well. That's all the points in the school will get added together, and you can see where you are comparatively with other schools. This can, you know, we are quite a small school, so we're not very often at the very top end of this, but also what's quite motivating is you can see that there's other schools, for example, for us in Scotland, and we can say, oh, you know, such and such, or look, oh, Melrose Grammar, or they have more points than us, you know, let's try and catch up with them. So lots of motivating factors there. The last wee couple of tabs here, just very quickly before I go into the reading activities. This section will show you the kind of accuracy with which pupils are completing activities, and can help you quickly identify, you know, what areas are we looking to improve on and things. You can get this at a class and individual level as well. And then of course the recent activity, which just tells you who's been on Languagenut and what they've been doing. So pupils will have their own login, and when they log in, they will have a screen that looks similar to this, and they can, of their own initiative, go in and explore and choose the activities that they learn. But you also have the ability to assign activities to them as well, which we can talk about a wee bit later on once I've discussed some of the features. In terms of reading and preparation for reading exams and exam level skills, this little exam skills section here is the one that I find particularly useful for some of my senior pupils. For us here, this is you know, separated into year groups. So for us, it would be S3, S4 that would be looking at primarily for this. And you can see that there's a range of topics there that line up really nicely with the different topics and contexts that are assessed and examined. These are just the topics that are already kind of put in by Languagenut. And when we go over to the vocab trainer, and also on this section as well, there is the ability to create your own content that is, you know, more bespoke around exactly what you're doing. But the vast majority of the time, you'll find something here that fits in quite nicely with what it is you're covering in class at the time. So if I was just to pick one, we'll just go back up to the top and go something straightforward. For example, if we were talking about food, if we were on that topic at the time, I could go into this. And it breaks it down into the 4 key skills here. Obviously today we're talking about reading, so I'll focus on that. Then gives you this little section here where you've got 3 different levels of difficulty, or of challenge perhaps is a better word, and little descriptors of them. So if I just take you through those. Level 1 would be students will understand a medium length text, which may include a mixture of present, future and past tenses, as well as connectives and opinions. Level 2, students will understand a medium length text, which may include a mixture of present, future and past tenses, as well as a wider range of vocabulary structures, and inference may be required for some questions. And then the third one is just a kind of next level up as well. Complex structures, etc., and conditional tenses and things. So, just for talking sake, if we were talking, doing a level 1 reading activity, if I take into that, you can see that you've got multiple sort of choices, or various choices, I should say, on the type of activity you do. This is really great for differentiation. Both the level of difficulty and the actual activities themselves allow you to have different sort of levels of challenge, different levels, potentially expectations on outcomes as well, based on the pupils that you are looking to complete each activity. And like I say, you can assign activities to pupils. You could assign a particular activity to a whole class, or you could assign one activity to one group of pupils and, say the other one to another group. So you've got that option there, but we'll go into that in just a wee moment. So if I just go for reading true or false for the moment. So the pupils would be asked to read the text and choose if each statement is true or false. And there you go. You've got 2 paragraphs in Spanish, and over here you have a series of questions and they have to answer true or false. You can do various things with this little section here, make the text bigger, easier for pupils to see and things if they're doing it on, maybe a smaller device. You can also change the background colour. Let me do that. Yeah, there we go. To help make it easier to read and see for pupils depending on their individual needs. Just go back to white for the moment. Find it. There we go. And you even have the ability in this little section up here to change the questions from English into Spanish. So instead of the question being phrased or posed in English, they can also be posed in the target language, whether that be Spanish, French, German, whatever it may be, to sort of increase that exposure to the target language as well. So if we just jump back to English just now, so you can see the question is, does he love to eat? So the pupils have to read this and then answer true or false. For the multiple choice, it would be, they would have 4 options and they'd have to choose the correct one. And I'll maybe show the gap fill in a wee second to give you a sense of that. But I want to show you what it looks like when a pupil completes an activity. So he says, me encanta comer, so we'll go true, and we'll just work our way through these. Does he always eat unhealthy food? There we go. They'll go false, there you go. And if they can click their way through, having read that and answering the questions. Now, I'll just click through at the moment, some will be right, some will be wrong, and you can see that as we're going along here, the answers will come up a tick if they get it right, cross if they get it wrong. So yes, he does. Does he eat plant-based food? False. Does he like to eat fish? False, so on and so forth. True. Yet, I'm just going to click through so we can get to the end. There we go, gone along to the end. And there you go. It'll tell you the pupils. Here's how many you got. Correct, incorrect. Take you through the questions, tell you what you got. And once you've done that, it'll tell them how many points they've got, which then contributes to the leaderboard that I showed you at the start, and pupils can see how they're getting on compared with their peers, compared with other people in their class, whoever it may be that they're trying to beat and compete with, they can see it there. So like I say, I find this really, really effective. It's really motivating. Pupils have the ability to do this on their own. They can choose to go in, empowering them to make, have pupil choice. They can say, I want to go and do a reading practice on a particular topic. But also you can assign it to them and say, right, this is your homework. Go away and complete these activities at home. I often find that pupils who are particularly competitive tend to go away and complete extra activities on top of what I've assigned them, but you know, that's exactly kind of what we're aiming for as well. If I just very quickly go back before I show you the next little section, just so you can see what the gap fill activity looks like. We just go level 2 this time. There we go, so we're back into this exam skills, S3, S4. I've chosen environment as our topic this time. Reading, challenge level 2, gap fill. So the pupils would need to, in this case, read this text here and choose the correct options from the right-hand side to fill in the gaps in the text to make it make sense. So they would be clicking and dragging these along, you know, and they can take them back out, so on and so forth. And once they're done, they can submit them all, and the text will tell them how many they've got right and how many they've got wrong. And the same thing again, once they've completed the activity, they will get their points, which then contributes back to their leaderboard. So again, another really useful one. I find this can be a really good level of challenge for pupils. I also find what's very helpful with this kind of activity is it's really useful and powerful as an extension activity for pupils who have maybe worked their way through something already and are needing pushed on a little bit. Then this sort of thing is really great because it forces pupils to focus in on particular meanings of sentences, particular meanings of words. And we quite often will pair this with you've got your dictionary on the side. Start by trying to find out what your words that you're trying to fill in are. Tell me what they mean, figure out what they mean, and then see if you can tackle it that way. But you can frame it, of course, in any way that suits the needs of the pupils and the class that you have sat in front of you as well. So again, really useful, really powerful tool to have in the bag. And as I say, loads of topics, loads of different things. We've even got this little section here, the job application, which is actually a writing activity, but that's a part of the National 5, the Scottish National 5 writing exam. So loads of topics there that are useful. And you can also create your own content here, as we have done, which can be used in various different ways. We quite often use these as talking questions where people would have to go in and record their answer. I will save that for the person delivering the talking session rather than the reading one. If I just take you back to that kind of home section, back to this screen here, there's another section in terms of pupils' reading skills that I find really, really helpful, which is this vocab trainer section here. So if I was to go into that, you've got various sections. Most of the time, myself, I'll be between this vocab trainer and AI chat here and the my content section there. If I just take you into this just now, again, a huge range of topics that you can dive into to support whatever it is that you are covering in class at the time. And for topics, I know these say 0%, that's because me personally, I haven't gone through and completed these activities. I'm sure you, the pupils, have done some of them. That's just because Mr. Anderson's account isn't going on and doing, the basics. Hopefully I'm okay with those. So if we were talking about basics for talking's sake and went into, say, it was animals we were learning about at the time, you'd be taken to this section here, which is really useful in a number of ways. So it gives you all of the vocabulary within this topic here. You can scroll up and down and see your kind of vocabulary sets, your target language on the top, and the source language underneath. And you can do a range of things with this here. This little plus here down the bottom will make the text larger and smaller. Time to make it larger because it can be useful actually to display this on your screen at the front, on the smartboard at the front of your classroom, and actually use this as a teaching point to do a display and say and a say and repeat. And you can do that in various ways. You yourself can go through these, but they do also, as you can see from these little icons here, there'll be a text-to-speech option that will read them out as well. It doesn't seem to want to work for me, but that's maybe just the way I've got it set up at the moment. But you can also have it down here, if I show you this kind of play and stop button in the middle, and that will read it read through them in Spanish, and it'll go through them one at a time, giving pupils the opportunity to repeat after each one is said. You can then, just take you back, start to make it more challenging by clicking either one of these kind of eye icons at the bottom. This kind of, I think it's maybe a dark navy or a black background, will take away the Spanish, will take away the target language, and you're left with just the English, and you could ask them, to name them as we go through, and play lots of activities and games that way, or the opposite, take away the English, and it can become a sort of translation activity as well. I then take you through to the practice section. So you've got, various different games here. Some, straightforward. You've got matching pairs, so they have to read these here, dog, and they have to match the correct target language, which I can't find at the moment. Here it's here, and they have to go through and do it that way, and it'll go that colour when they've got it right, and it'll go red if they've got it wrong. And same thing, if they work their way through this, they will then be rewarded with points at the end, depending on how they've gotten on. Also have a wee timer at the bottom here, increases that kind of level of competition, how fast can each pupil get, work their way through it and things. But you've also got other activities. Things like noughts and crosses is always a hit, and they can have the option to play it against the computer. If they play single player, if they play two players, it'll be two individuals playing against each other. And again, level 1, level 2, just for level of challenge. They'd be presented with this grid here, and they would have to bring over, so this is the user, so this is me playing, I'd have to click, drag over the correct English translation of the Spanish word on the grid, drop it over, there you go, and then the computer takes their turn, so on and so forth. And they can play a game of noughts and crosses there as well. So there's really a range of kind of games and reading options there. Word pop, again, another great option. They have a word in the middle, and they need to pop the correct bubble of the word that it corresponds with. Snake, la serpiente, there you go, and it ticks at the bottom as they get them right. And they get a few opportunities at each one, which is what you can see down at the bottom here as well. Again, another really fun activity that gets pupils involved in engaging with the language, engaging with the reading as well. But when you're focusing on individual pieces of vocab, the vocab trainer is really helpful for that. When you're then starting to think about applying that in a sort of broader context, we're looking at exam skills. When you've got more elongated texts, the exam skills section is really, really great for that. I think I've got a wee bit of time, so just a very quick thing I wanted to just share with you all as well. They can complete this as practice, but they can then get a quiz, get extra points, and they can then, it gets fed back to you how they perform in these quizzes when you assign them to them, which is what I'll just show you just now. So on both the exam skills section and the vocab trainer, once you've gone through, gotten to this point where you're in the set of vocab that you want to teach, that you want to assign, you'll have this button up the top right here, the assign button, which will take you to this screen here. So quite often I'll be creating these as assignments. You can also create them as a test. I was taking to assignment. It then gives you your classes that you have created and put together. So the pupils will have their own login, but each pupil will belong to a class. If I was to take, say, for talking sake, this, class 1D, I can select all, as in assign it to all the pupils in the class, or I can go in and select individual pupils, unselect individual pupils, etc., and just decide who to assign it to rather than all of them. Again, like I was talking about earlier, giving you that option to assign to some but not all, differentiate, and giving some pupils one type of activity and another pupils a different one, so on and so forth. But say for talking sake, I was assigning this to my first years, going through, I would then give it a name, so it could be whatever, for talking sake, we'll say animals. You then set the date that it would be due on. You could have it that it's due today kind of thing, because you want it to be completed by the end of the period or something like that. or if it's homework, which is quite often how we use this kind of activity, you could set it for a week's time, whatever it may be. You have the ability that, to complete it by this point. You have choices in terms of whether they can repeat it multiple times to get a better score, either on or off. You can ask it to email you when they're completed it, and so on and so forth. Various options in that kind of section as well. And you can even, this part here, edit the vocab, as in which pieces of vocab do you want them to focus on? Are there some in here that you're not teaching, or that you're confident that they're already comfortable with, so you take them out? So I can take out this one, for example, so on and so forth, and pick the particular ones. Save that, go to next, and there you go. You would have your assignment ready to go, and I would just press save. And that'd be assigned to them to complete in class, at home, however it is that's most suitable for what it is that you're looking for them to do. So that's the real kind of main parts of Languagenut that we use, particularly for reading skills. Like I say, there are other sections that are useful for other key skills as well, but I think those are kind of the key ones that really stand out for us and pupils find really motivating. With more time, there's more sections that we would be able to go into, of course, but like I say, I'll just take you back to that main screen. Exam skills, really useful. Vocab trainer, really useful as well, in terms of getting pupils engaged in reading activities in the language, empowering them to make their own choices, and getting quite competitive about it, which is definitely the aspect that our pupils have taken to the most.
Lots of lovely ideas, and as you said, there are other parts of the platform that will be really useful for your students, and you quite rightly said motivation being the key factor for them. So I just wanted to kind of draw everybody's attention to the Languagenut Live. So within the Live, you can set up a match. You don't actually have to do it in real time. You can set it up before the lesson, which is really good, because in that kind of 5 minutes when you're setting something up, that tends to be when the behaviour goes a little bit awry. So at least with Languagenut, you can set it up ahead of time, which is lovely. And within that, you can then choose your reading skills within the vocabulary and the match as they're playing it. The onus is on the student getting the answer right within their own time frame. So we do have a leaderboard, but it's at the end of the round. So you don't actually have the real-time leaderboard. There's not that sense of anxiety and students clicking just for the sake of clicking. The onus is on them getting the answer right within their own time frame. So it's about them thinking about their own answers. So that kind of sets us apart from other people that have different live activities. Within the content library, you can have a look at what your colleagues have uploaded in terms of vocabulary, but thinking about setting your own, for example. You might want to do a bit of flipped learning or pre-learning, and if you do have a reading text, you could always take out those key vocab items that you think maybe your students won't know, especially if we're looking at an authentic text, or thinking about your higher students and you want to push them a little bit further outside of the specification. Then you can always create your own content through the custom content. So that's something else that I think would be really useful in the classroom setting. So again, thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you to Callum for his ideas and his contributions today. I'm sure everybody's got some ideas that they can take away and use in their classroom as well. If you don't currently subscribe and would like to book in for a demo, then please contact enquiries@languagenut.com. If you have enjoyed this webinar, then please give us a shout out on social media. Thank you again to Callum, and thank you to everybody for watching, and have a lovely evening.